going to be talking about something that's quite different in the construction industry generally. We're going to be talking about collaboration between different companies in the supply chain for retrofit, between different landlords who are doing retrofit, all with the aim of creating a new way of doing retrofit, which we call Energiesprong, which is Dutch for energy leap. It's their approach to delivering zero carbon retrofit of homes at scale with guaranteed real performance, guaranteed affordable costs, delivered by a new industrialized supply chain that can do this job at scale, at really high quality, with actual guaranteed long-term savings. And we use those savings to finance the retrofit. So that's what Energiesprong is. And my name is Ian Hutchcroft. I'm one of the Energiesprong team. And on International Women's Day, I'm afraid you've got another bloke. I shouldn't be here. It should be my colleague Emily. She's got COVID in her family. Her stand-in is recovering from concussion at the moment, a little accident she had recently. Elle's stand-in Justine was speaking earlier, so she's having a break. The message I'm trying to give here is that we are quite a diverse organisation, as well as accident-prone. But we're a small team of 11, 7 women, 4 men, and diversity is really important anywhere, but it's particularly important in a place where you're trying to create something new, because you need a diverse team to bring lots of different perspectives together. And diversity really helps, as well as having excellent individuals as well. Diversity helps. So that's my little International Women's Day presentation. We're going to talk generally about how this collaboration thing that we've created, called Energiesprong, we've got an innovation partnership, which is a public procurement mechanism, which all of these guys can talk a lot more about. I think we'll ask Russell from Turner and Townsend to say a little bit more about what the innovation partnership is. But this is just what I said about what Energiesprong is. This is some of the challenges, rethinking procurement, creating a new industrialized approach, prototyping. That's the stage we're at the moment. We've got 180 homes across London and the rest of the UK on site this quarter, on the back of 174 homes which have been completed last year, all monitored real time, every hour, every day, lifetime of the retrofit, loads of data, loads of learning. And that's what we're going to talk about, is learning and collaboration. So this is the innovation partnership that these guys are all a part of. It's 4 solution providers who are designing, installing, and guaranteeing the long-term performance of retrofit. 9 social landlords who have come together, aggregated their demand into a single procurement called the Innovation Partnership, and with different archetypes being delivered by different solution providers and sharing all that learning, we're creating a lot more pace and scale for creating this new way of doing retrofit. So I think I'll leave that slide there. It gives you a bit of an idea of who is in this innovation partnership. And I'm going to ask our panel, our esteemed panel, just to say a little bit about who they are and where they fit on this plateau of a tableau, I should say, of logos. So we've got supply chain over here. We've got demand side landlords over here. And in the middle, we've got the likes of us, Energiesprong UK and Turner and Townsend, and the Mayor of London, who are facilitating, enabling and supporting all of this collaboration across. So, Vicky, would you like to say a little bit about who you are and your company and what your role is? Don't answer the whole story, because we're going to save that, but a brief introduction. Thank you.
Hello, good evening everybody. I'm Vicky Fordham-Lewis. I'm the Managing Director of Osborne Property Services. It was back in December 2020 when the innovation framework was procured that we decided that we wanted to take our route to market for our carbon neutral brand through that framework. It was particularly attractive to us because of the 4-stage process that it goes through and the collaboration that it enables with other like-minded parties, and the fact that you get an opportunity to learn from what everybody's doing, not just the things that we're doing. So we're delighted to be on the framework.
Hi, I'm Russell Urwin. I'm from Townsend Consulting, and we are part of the team who have driven this piece of work forward for quite a few years. I think we're in year 4 of the Innovation Partnership so far. The background to it is the Mayor of London's Retrofit Accelerator for Homes and the GLA have sponsored this Innovation Partnership. What we're doing is it's a vehicle, it's a procurement vehicle that it's underused really. It's an option as part of the Public Contracts Regulations 2015. It allows landlords to try to bring together a product that doesn't really exist. It allows them to research that, develop it, and get it into delivery mode, where at the moment you can't go and buy that net zero retrofit product as it is. So it's a challenge to develop that over time, and we have a number of stages that we work through. So the Innovation Partnership has 4 stages, and the first of that is a design stage where we will look at what we can do with the available retrofit technologies we have and how we can adapt those to various stock types. Then we have a prototype phase where we take that into sort of the key learnings and we apply that to a small selection of homes. Then we take that to the next step, which is to pilot that and run that learning through and really get that performance measurement that we need. And then we move that into a commercialization stage where we can really look at how we can make savings and how we can drive the price point that we want at the end of that. And after that stage, we move to a framework, as Vicky mentioned there. The Innovation Partnership leads to a framework opportunity, which will be a national opportunity. So landlords could then look to purchase a retrofit solution at a price point that they can afford for a house type that they are interested in. So that could be 2-bed, 3-bed, or a flat. And at that point then, we hope to see the larger scale rollout of that work. So Townsend are providing the sort of the project management function for the Innovation Partnership, as well as a retrofit delivery manager role where we support the individual landlords who are part of the teams to help them work through all of the gateways and the funding milestones that we need to achieve.
Hi, I'm Nilavra Mukerji, Director of Asset Investment and Sustainability at Sutton Housing Partnership. Sutton Housing Partnership is the arm's length management organisation that manages council homes for the London Borough of Sutton. So I feel a little bit of a fraud in that I started with the organisation last July, and all this work started way before me. But I'm going to talk a little bit very quickly about the backstory and where we are. So the purpose of this is, as everyone said, it's around learning through innovation. So about a year before I started, we were looking as an organisation as to how we can look at retrofit for Sutton and for our homes, and what would be a way to sort of dip our toe in the water, if you like, and put together some pilots and do some learning from that pilots. And this opportunity was one that we saw as a really good way of coming into that, and hopefully creating a model and a template which we can then use to look at more homes that we want to do within Sutton, and also hopefully help contribute to a broader agenda and help other social housing providers like ourselves develop their thinking. And I think that's the key to this partnership. It's around collaboration, and it's around working with others and looking at how we can actually navigate and work through some of the issues that we have. Thank you.
Thanks very much, panel. Thank you. So we're going to ask a few questions and tee up a little bit of discussion. And if you go onto the Energiesprong UK website or the LinkedIn page or search on #RetrofitDisruptors, you see a lot of stuff on there about how this innovation partnership is working and how this new way of working between competitors normally in the market, companies that are normally tendering for work and competing with each other, very rarely tell each other how they're doing it and how their successful scheme really worked, or the problems that they had and what didn't work, very rarely telling their competitors that. There's some really nice videos on there, and Vicky is a star of some of those videos. So Vicky, tell us a little bit more about how different this way of working is for you and your company, and what you've got out of it to date.
I think the biggest difference of working in this environment has got to be the collaboration. And we talk about it a lot in the construction industry, but in the last sort of 20 years, this is probably the only real example I could give of where it's truly happened. And if you'd have said to me before we joined the Innovation Framework and Partnership and the Collaboration Hub that you would sit and discuss your prices, what was making money, not making money, full open book transparency, and I'd be sat with people from United Living, Bell Group, Equans, having those conversations, I'd have said, no, never, that's not going to happen. That's not how the construction sector works. That's not how we do it. And we very quickly, it's interesting how old habits, they die quite quickly, and how everybody within that group started to be very open and transparent. We then had a sounding board for ideas. If things didn't work particularly well or things were being tested out and we wanted to try something new, it wasn't just the Osborne team that were doing that. We were doing that with the wider party, and that's been really, really helpful and informative. It's completely changed the way that the people in my business look around collaboration and what that really means.
Great, thank you, Vicky. And Russell, you've supported a lot of social landlords and others in the past, haven't you, on delivering construction contracts? This contract's very different, isn't it? How would you summarise the sort of key differences and the way that it's working?
The first difference for me was the passion that came across from all of the solution providers in wanting to get a product that really worked for residents. And the first thing we did was map out the customer journey. We spent a lot of time looking at all the touch points with residents. And that sort of set the stall for how we would tackle those problems together. So as part of the Innovation Partnership, we have a number of collaboration sessions. So we have group sessions with all of the solution providers and the housing providers together, as well as ourselves. We have one-to-ones with the solution providers to talk about more technical and procurement-related issues and share that learning. And then we have sessions with the housing providers as a collective to talk through their sort of barriers, the governance issues, the funding constraints, and all of those learning areas come together and we disseminate that out across the partnership. And everybody's been really passionate about wanting to share that. And as Vicky says, it's really surprising to see people say, well, I've got a template for that and I've got a process for that. So we managed to chip away a lot of the journey by saying, oh, well, we've got that, we can just tweak that and develop that. And over the months that we've been working on this, it's been really great to see how that's blossomed over time. And the design parts of it, the challenges that are there, they're not new, but we've short-circuited a lot of those steps by coming together, and that's been the best bit for me.
Thanks very much, Russell. And from your perspective, Nilavra, again, you've been involved in lots of retrofit and construction projects in the past. How does this look different, this way of working, from your perspective as a client, as a landlord, with a net zero target for your stock, with a hell of a big challenge, a lot of problems? How does this way of working address those problems in a different way, would you say?
So I suppose what Vicky was saying about the suppliers getting together and talking through issues and comparing notes and sharing ideas. If you look at the client side, as would be a traditional kind of term, and look at us as the landlords or the providers, we also get together and we share experiences and we share problems and solutions and learning and how we can do things differently, which is, again, a very strong kind of collaborative approach to looking at how we deliver this. And I think partnering is not a new concept. launched in the 90s, and we've all done partnering contracts of some shape or form. We've all tried to do open book of some shape or form. I suppose the difference here is you've got a supply chain that's talking with each other rather than competing with each other. And you've got a group of landlords that are also talking to each other and harvesting all the ideas and all the practice. And I think what struck me about this is between both groups, there's a much stronger set of probably shared values as to what we want to achieve. No one's looking to cut corners, and no one's looking to do a bad job, because I think we're all conscious that retrofit has got to stand the test of time, and it's important that we do the solutions properly and don't build in future problems. So I think the openness and transparency in that relationship is something that I haven't witnessed before, even in really good partnering contracts. So I think that's probably what I'd single out.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So this is a different way of working. I think we could say it's delivering some results, isn't it? We had quite a lot of knowledge sharing. We've visited each other's factories and sites, and we've looked under things, and we've been over to Europe and seen how the Dutch, the Germans, the French and the Italians are doing Energiesprong as well. We've actually been to, this is last week, in Barking, with a new industrialized panel approach to fabric, ultra frame. This is delivered by Equans, one of the other partners. So we've been, Neil from Barking was going to be here today and say a bit more about it, but this is a live site. We're learning stuff, and it's not just Equans and Barking and Dagenham that are learning it, but I think Vicky and Osborne and Bell and United Living are learning from what's happening here as well. So stuff is beginning to happen. I think this is really working. And we've got a range of innovations. I mentioned the ultra panel system called House Wrap. It's new. It didn't exist before we started the innovation partnership. But the way that we've put this contract out, this aggregated volume of work, with a carrot of a £10 billion framework, if you can prove your technology works, if you can get the cost down to a place where it pays for itself off the long-term savings, you've got a role in that £10 billion framework. Big carrot. And it's flushed out new technologies. This house wrap solution is one of 3 or 4 different approaches to doing external fabric insulation. And we've got Monodraft as well. I think Monodraft are working in Sutton, aren't they, Nilavra? So this is about putting all the M&E in a box. So it's not just about a heat pump. It's about a heat pump plus a battery, plus the inverter for the PV, plus the hot water storage, plus the battery storage, plus the ventilation. Doing all of that in a factory, putting it in a box, carrying the box to the site and plugging it into existing plumbing and electrics. That halves the cost of M&E in retrofit. Already, we're only at prototype volumes, and that's something that's been flushed out by this new innovation partnership contract, which is driving everybody to the end point, starting with the end in mind that we're all trying to get to. So I think we could say we've had some successes already, haven't we? But I should give a little plug to Bowtie as well, because they've developed a ventilation system which is thin. It's really thin. It doesn't sit in the loft, which is expensive to get into for servicing. It can be a bit noisy sometimes as well. It goes on the outside, but it's really thin, so that when the panelised fabric solution goes in, it's flush with it. And it's got a door on it from the outside that you can service that ventilation and heat recovery system from. Really good bit of innovation, and it's brand new. Didn't exist before the innovation partnership. And we've got Melius Homes, which has got a structural panel, which is for cross-wall properties. Cross-wall properties where the strength is in these walls that go laterally. So there's nothing to screw anything into in this facade. The Melius system is strong enough to go across 2 anchor points, and that's the specific solution for a specific archetype. And there are lots of properties like that across the country. So these are some of the good things that are happening in the last Well, we've only really been at it 18 months, I would say. We've got another year or two. But there are challenges, aren't there? We wouldn't be telling the truth if we didn't fess up that this is really difficult. Even though we think this approach is something that will deliver and is delivering, this is a challenging thing we're trying to do in a not very helpful environment of policy, regulation, cost. We're trying to crack it against swimming against the tide, largely. So I'm going to ask our panel to be honest and say what has been a real challenge and how has the Innovation Partnership helped us overcome those challenges. Shall I start? Shall I go in the same order?
Sure.
So, okay, so one of the challenges we have is obviously working in a grant environment. There are deadlines, there are timescales, there's necessary paperwork. I don't want to upset anyone from the grant body if they are here. We understand why that's necessary, but it does provide quite a rigid structure in terms of how we must progress. However, the way that we need to progress is often through the collaborative environment, less rigid and more fluid, and bringing the two together isn't always as straightforward as you'd like it to be. So I think there is a challenge around how do you deliver within a grant structure and a grant kind of environment whilst trying to do something which is actually quite ambitious and innovative and not been done before. I think that's something that we've been working with, and we're working closely with our grant providers, Interreg and others, and that's something we work through, but it's a significant challenge. And probably another one, we started with houses, and there's quite a lot of learning that we did from the houses. The monodraft system, for example, we've used that on the houses. It does save money, but it also saves the level of invasiveness that's required and intrusiveness that's required within the home. So it makes it a little less inconvenient for residents whilst the work is happening. And to be honest, it is a lot of work, what goes on, and people have to be patient with that. With the best will in the world, that's just the nature of it. So that's been helpful. But I think we've now moved on to trying to do a mixed tenure block, where we've actually got some leaseholders as well as tenants. And that's also quite a significant challenge in that once upon a time when all this was invented, it wasn't really designed for retrofit work, and we're working through some of those challenges at the moment. So there's a few challenges I just wanted to highlight, if I stop there.
Thanks, Nilavra. And you know, Russell, you've been at the front end of trying to sort out some of these challenges, both on projects and both contractually as well. What would you say this new way of working how has it helped us address challenges?
One of the biggest challenges for the landlords was the knowledge of their own stock. So finding a sort of a test bed of properties to start on was a lot more challenging than we thought. We identified a really long list of homes with each landlord that we felt that we could apply retrofit to. Then as we got into the design stage, we started to do the surveying aspect of that. It became quite clear quite quickly that there wasn't enough intelligence about archetypes, sub-archetypes, what works had been carried out to properties over time, what measures had been installed. There was a whole host of things that we needed to know to de-risk the process, and that was the bit for the solution providers where they were coming to the table ready to sort of go at it and say, okay, we want to get out there and start designing, but they couldn't because we didn't know enough. And they always say, you don't know what you don't know. And as we started the survey process, it became quite clear that we needed to go back and do a lot more investigatory work to de-risk the projects, because we had a sort of the collaboration approach. We had a set design fee and design structure to work to, and we had to navigate around that contractually. So that meant that the housing providers had to dip their hand in the pocket and find a bit more surveying money and a bit more resource to go and do that. So that was a huge challenge to get us off on the right foot. but the solution providers worked really well to bring in surveying resource, bring in retrofit coordinators, bring in specialists to react quickly and gather that intelligence and gather that information so they could start the design process. So that was the biggest aspect of that. The other key challenge was planning. Never underestimate planning. So as we've talked about the funding constraints and the timelines, we set off on an approach to try and do as much under permitted development as we could and utilise that functionality. The lessons we learned from that was it would have been easier to go back and do full plans applications. So there were a couple of schemes where we dropped off permitted development quite quickly, and we just said, look, let's just go for it. Be brave, be bold, do what you want to do. Let's have, the roofs built up. We'll have the walls built out. We'll have, as much as we can throw at it. And that then allowed us to have conversations with planning teams and to get to the bottom of what the constraints that the planning teams were working under. So local plans not being developed, a retrofit approach not being established, and a lack of knowledge by some of the planning officials about what housing retrofit really meant. And we did some great workshops where we brought the local authorities together, we brought senior planners together, and we talked through how we could make this different. And we came up with ways of having dedicated planning officers and paying a little bit extra to get faster sort of results and turnarounds, and it worked. Whereas other projects where we use permitted development, we were constantly chasing our tail, and that's the key lesson for me is just go for planning.
Thanks, Russell. So Vicky, from the solution provider side, boy, there's been some challenges in this,
lots.
haven't there? Do you want to talk about the challenges as you've seen them and how this way of working has helped you overcome them?
I think the analogy I would use is that we're driving a train on a track that's being laid as we go, and that infrastructure isn't around us to enable us to drive at speed with confidence without derailing it. And you speak of the permitted development and planning. There is no national planning or permitted development approach to how we retrofit. We desperately need one, don't we? Because if we don't, we're going to end up with some terrible looking properties as the years go on in 20, 30 years. There's no national workforce strategy. So we've got one in my business, and I know lots of other of my competitors have got workforce strategies, but we need to be upskilling, cross-training and enabling people, because I can retrofit thousands of homes a year, but I need the resource to come behind me to be able to service, maintain and look after those homes. We need to work with our customers to make sure they understand how to use their homes, and there's no national approach to that. So we've developed that and grown with the customers. We've gone along that journey with them. And that should never be underestimated, I don't think. The amount of time that needs to be spent on engaging and supporting customers, both pre-start, during the works, and then after they've lived in their homes and how they use it and how they look after them. And I think, so if I go back to my train, we're on this fast train and we're all working together, we're all in the carriages, we're all moving up and down. You're getting the drinks in, I think, afterwards. But we need all of this stuff around us to come together and to work. And I guess that's where the innovation hubs come into its own, because I'd hate to be on that train on my own, trying to find the solutions on my own, and I haven't. I can ring Russell and speak to Nilavra, I can speak to Energiesprong, I speak to Andy Mirren, who's just come out the back there from United Living, so I can't do this anymore. Andy, how do we do this bit? And that's how it works, and that's why it's worked really well for us.
Thank you, Vicky, thank you. And just to dwell, we're going to not dwell on all the challenges, we're going to talk about some of the successes next. But there's a real challenge for solution providers here, isn't there? In that not only are you asked to design and install using new components, prototyped, industrialized components, but you're also asked to guarantee the actual performance of the properties, that they can meet an outcome-based specification which says these homes will be warm and comfortable with an allowance for power use for lighting, appliances and plugs, all for an affordable price. Boards don't normally get asked to sign off that sort of thing in the construction industry, do they? That's a hell of a challenge. How has your business How have you responded to that challenge in this contract?
Well, I think, I mean, I won't lie. If anyone's a contractor in here and you've had to go to your group board for a whole host of parent company guarantees to guarantee the performance of something for 25 years, it's an interesting meeting. But realistically, it's not something we don't do every day. I mean, under the Defective Premises Act, it goes back a great period of time now. And as a responsible constructor and developer, we want to make sure that the solutions we embed into homes last the duration and they do what they say they're going to do. So I think it was, it took a little bit of, not persuading, but a lot of discussion about it. But, fully on board with it to do that. And then when we went through the explanation of the design and how we were able to monitor it, and that lots of the components we're using, we've been used before, we're just bringing them together for the first time. And then you layer on the activities that you're doing with the customers and the clients to support that, then we've got the full support of the Osborne board to deliver that. But everything's got to be done first at some point, hasn't it? And you make a decision whether you're going to try and lead that process or you're going to follow in the wake of it. And at Osborne, they took the decision to lead that process as part of the and the innovation frameworks enabled us to do that really easily.
Great, thank you, Vicky. So it's happening here first. We're only a little way into this, really. It feels like we've been at this for a while, but actually, it's just the beginning, isn't it? What did you say? Russell's gone grey in the time you've known him.
He's only 22.
So it's a staged process. As volume goes up at each stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, the price has to go down at each stage. In an environment where obviously costs across the industry have gone up in the last couple of years, and we're trying to drive cost reduction and do prototypes. So we're doing prototypes now. We're at the advanced stage of doing prototypes. The next stage is really to scale up the learning. Learn from all of those projects, not just Osborne learning from Osborne's projects, but all of the solution providers learning from each other's projects as well, and applying it to the next stage. And the challenge for Nilavra and the other social land laws, the 9 social land laws that are in this, is to be able to carry on funding and financing these projects that are quite expensive at the beginning. Small volumes, expensive, but if we don't do this, we're not going to get down to large scale across our stocks at an affordable price. If there's anybody from government here, it'd be great if you could support these landlords on that journey, because we do need a bit more support. But even without that, we are moving and thinking about the next stages, even as the prototypes are being delivered as well. So let's think about achievements so far, successes so far, and then we'll give you an opportunity to ask some questions before the beer, which is at the back, which will focus the minds, I'm sure. So, successes so far, there's a few here. I think you could probably be a bit more specific. What would you say, Vicky, as a key success so far in the journey?
There's been quite a few different successes, I think, as we've gone through the different milestones of the project. But for me, it's got to all come down to the collaboration with everybody else, and the fact that we've designed a panelised solution that we were hoping that we can prototype to be able to deliver at mass around different properties. It's a way the teams have adapted to the new environment and the different ways of working and the way that they've supported their customers in doing that. And it's also the way that this whole process has worked. I think that's got, that in itself has got to be recognised as a huge success, I personally think.
Thanks. Russell, what do you think?
For me, it's been the opportunity to try as many different variations as possible. So we've got multiple solutions. So we've got traditional EWI, but we've got real innovation with panelised solutions that are being made off-site and then adapted from a new build application to work in the confines of existing streets and archetypes. But also, we're piloting lots of different technologies across all the schemes. So all the solution providers and all the landlords get to see those and understand how they can then take those forward. So we've got the range of traditional half a semi or a pair of semis to the cross-wall construction that you've got there, 3-story applications, as well as the more complex archetypes. And all of that learning is available to all of the people who are involved as long as they stay on this journey. And that's the risk that a lot of people have done pilots over time. So a lot of landlords will say, yeah, we've done retrofit here, there and everywhere, but it's been piecemeal. And the lessons get learned and then lost, and teams move on. There needs to be that continuity of it, so it becomes embedded, it becomes the way of working normally. And that for me that's what I can see coming out of this, is we're skilling up a lot of the social housing providers. Their teams are starting to get really confident in understanding the technology, the performance, and they're building the resident journey that hopefully I can see now is more likely to continue. So that for me has been the real success.
Thanks, Russell. Nilavra, what's the key success from your perspective so far in this journey?
Okay, so I'm gonna pick a simple example. So I'm not allowed out much. I'm typically locked up in meetings, either on screen or face to face. But now and again, I try and just kind of break free and go and have a look at, some of our properties and what we're doing. So I went to visit one of our residents who've had the Energiesprong solution, and it's like a new house. And they were quite clear that yes, there was a lot of work involved, and that was managed well, but obviously there are, as with any building works, you have things that happen. But they're absolutely thrilled with the end product, and they noticed during the summer months, during that heat wave, that their house didn't get as hot as it would have done previously. And they also noticed, because they had the kit running, that actually their radiators were getting a bit cooler, and actually the temperature inside was possibly not as hot as it would have been, because they were getting this nice kind of cold radiators that were just kind of giving off, just giving a little bit of background coldness. And they've had neighbours come up to them, some of whom who could have been on the pilot but kind of chose not to because they weren't quite sure, and they regret not having it done because actually they see the benefit of the end product. So mine's a resident experience, because at the end of the day that's what this is about, and that's why we're doing it. And that was a very, very positive afternoon, and I'm very, very proud of that.
Thanks, Nev. That's a great example to finish up on. Shall we ask you to ask some questions of the panel? What do you think of all this? What you must be scratching your head about this. It all sounds a bit wacky. Julian, do you want to just introduce yourself and where you're from?
Julian Boss. I work with Russell on the Energiesprong project as well, and I think it's been a really, really productive process. Everything about it is great, and I agree entirely with Russell about the planning has been beyond difficult. It's been decisions that then change, go back and change again, because all sorts of spanners get thrown in from one thing to another. And just as you feel you've got something sorted and you're celebrating, it gets undone again because of something like, the energy pod, we had to change it because the first one we put in, it's really not working properly, we're going to put another one in, we've got sound issues, we're going to have to go back, we're going to have acoustic testing done on this one, and on it goes. It's just the nature of innovation. But one thing I felt was, in the early days when we were looking at different solutions, one of the people that came up was BT Passive. They've got a wonderful product in the kind of T-Cozy solution. And at one stage, a lot of the different solution providers were looking to BT Passive variations as a potential solution. And in the end, that hasn't come to any fruition, although that company do have a really good product. And I just wondered something from my point of view of having worked on the project was how you would allow maybe companies like them a little bit more of an inroad into this opportunity, because I'm sure they could take it. And I think there's a structural thing about the way things have happened that's, they were on the cards to provide stuff for everyone. They did a lot of quotes, a lot of engagement, and everything else. It was what people were talking about for 9 months. And then they just went off the whole conversation. And I think from their point of view as an SME, that's really disappointing. And I think the opportunity in this area for companies like that, it would be great to see that, sort of embedded a little bit more. So I wanted to ask whether that was possible and kind of make the point as an observation.
Thanks, Julian. Anyone like to answer that?
I think as a supplier, we've got a number of things which are really challenging when we're delivering these types of works. The first is the timescales in terms of when we've got to deliver the work by with the funding deadlines. And that isn't easy because, as we've attested to today, the pre-start process of planning, that just eats into that valuable time. The second is availability of people to come to the table to deliver those programs of work when you're onboarding them and what you need to do. And the third, it comes down to price. And unfortunately, price is really important. Now, I suspect that as this program develops and we ramp up and start upscaling the volume of delivery, we will see price points of products like the one you mentioned come down. And then we'll be able to use those at large scale. My understanding is on that particular scheme, we went back to a rendered solution, I believe, an EWI solution.
They were being used on several
Right.
schemes, and we switched. So some have gone to a traditional EWI, and some have gone to an alternative panelised solution. Yeah.
So, but it did come down to price. So there's work that we need to do with providers to look at how we can keep their prices low and get the volume up effectively, don't we? But there's work that we need to do on that, definitely.
And I think what that example shows as well is there isn't one size fits all. There isn't one solution that fits every home in the country. There are a lot of different archetypes in the UK housing stock. And I think BT Passive, who are doing very well, I think, as a company outside of the Innovation Partnership, their solution works really well for specific archetypes. It's a very structural solution, so it is quite expensive. But if you've got a non-traditional property with a structural situation that is not strong enough to hang anything else on, the BT Passive system can almost stand alone and go up the sides, over the top, and structurally support itself and insulate it. And so I think there's probably a space for BT Passive out there. It's just that the archetypes that we've been working on so far, I think we've worked with about 7 or 8 specific archetypes. I think that solution doesn't quite fit those archetypes, but there are lots of others out there that it probably will do, I would expect. Has anybody else got a question or a comment to make? There's quite a few here. We'll go at the back. Go you first, and then over to you.
Have you managed to find any IWI systems that you can churn out at volume?
Yeah, we're actually putting some in for one of our other clients down in Winchester at the moment because of the nature of the properties and the protection that the properties have got down in Winchester. An IWI solution is the only solution that we can actually adopt there. They've actually opted to put those in during the void programme. So as the property becomes void, the whole property gets retrofitted at that stage, and we're putting an IWI in there. So it's not without its challenges because you've got lots of other things to think about when you're doing IWI. But that's why it suits a void programme, to be honest. So.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to say anything on that one, or should we go to the next one?
No, I've worked with some other local authorities who've got listed building stock, and they are focusing on IWI because that's the only option they've got. But it's not everybody's choice because of the impact on the residents and the reduction in the floor plan. So it's a really challenging one. It will have to happen, but external solutions are more favourable for the types of archetypes we're looking at. But just to say what Ian said, one size doesn't fit all, and I think what we're seeing here is we will develop a range of solutions, and some will be better for a particular archetype that they'll be picked up, but also just as part of what landlords have to do, retrofit isn't the only solution, and there will be swathes of your stock that you can do other measures to, and retrofit will only be a proportion of it, and that's what you need to reflect.
Thank you. The second question.
Hi there, thanks very much for your talks. How much more motivated do you find people are to sort of chip in with almost pro bono bits of work because they're on this innovation framework compared to usually when you're fixed into a scope of fees and a scope of services? Do you find that people are much more willing to help out and go the extra mile on different things and then give back? Yeah,
it's a great question.
It is a great question. I think my experience with this so far is that the approach that ourselves and, in this case, Osborne's have taken is very much around problem solving. So it's the work that is necessary to solve the problem and come up with a solution that would actually work. So in that sense, I certainly feel that the way we work and the collaborative nature of the work is more than you'd get in a more traditional partnering style contract, if you see what I mean. So yes, I would say that going the extra mile is something that I would say, particularly on the project we're working on at the moment, I'm very conscious that everybody around the table are in problem solving mode when we try and work out how we do it, and we do what is necessary to make it work.
Thank you. I think we're going to have to make this third question the last question.
Hiya. I just kind of wanted to ask, like, what is the ultimate end goal for this? Because I know we've spoken a lot about hard to treat homes and, you know, circuit boarding problems and short circuiting them there. So, like, in terms of your roles within the partnership, like, what are the end goals and how does this influence the wider market? Because we're seeing retrofit is being done at much larger scales and it'll hopefully continue that way. So what influence would that have on that long term?
I'd like to think that the work we're doing here now will help to prototype what happens in the next 20, 30 years in the built environment. And I think this work plays a part in whole house retrofit in terms of getting stock up to an acceptable standard very quickly, but then using other technologies and doing it in a piecemeal fashion, sort of EPC jumping between now 2030, 2050. Because I think that the funding just isn't available to do every piece of property in the UK and to whole house retrofit it. And it won't suit Nilavra's budgets, definitely, I would think, if we were going to do all of your stock. So I think that the work that we're doing here now, hopefully that will contribute and play a massive part into what the built environment looks like by 2015.
So from our perspective, one of the underlying principles of the Innovation Partnership is to share knowledge, and it's to raise skills. So that, along with the funding providers, also their remit, they want that sort of catalyst for retrofit and to get that knowledge out there. That's where we see ourselves as an enabler. So we are in a fortunate position where we can gather all this intelligence, and part of our role is to disseminate that and make sure that that is picked up and embedded. So that's for us is not only just what we learn now, but we push that out there to the nationwide, so not just London projects, it's nationwide learning.
I mean, it's an interesting question, isn't it? And where does it end up? I suppose for me, delivering this is probably the challenge for our time, because we know that we need more homes and we've needed more homes, and hopefully that is also being addressed. But people will always want a new kitchen or a new bathroom, and that's just stuff we have to do. But actually, fundamentally, what we've now got to do to our homes is look at how they can work for the future and how they can meet the demands and needs of the future and how they can deliver zero carbon, but also do it in a way that people's bills drop and energy is affordable and we use less energy. And that's probably the biggest challenge that we've got. And what I hope we're doing through this work is coming up with some models, some exemplars, some templates, some things that inform broader thinking. At some point the money will follow, we'd like to think. But when the money does come, it's important that we've got a way in which we can deliver the projects and we can actually get the work done. Last time when we did Decent Homes, that was relatively easy because there's nothing there that we were doing that we hadn't done again and again and again, just at sort of smaller scale. But this time the work we're doing is new, and hopefully what we get is through this is a scalable model that when the funding is available can be rolled out at scale, and that's probably what I'd want to achieve out of it.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the great questions. I could see a thirsty rabble out there, and please do stay. have a drink with us. You can ask questions, make comments, get to know us a bit more, and do look at our website and social media feeds as well, Energiesprong UK, for our latest progress on how we get on. So thank you very much, and thank you very much to our panel.